I'm not dead yet, although that looked like kind of arbitrary. I want to excuse my English, and I want to use a phrase that Celia Cruz used when she was speaking. My English is not very good looking, so bear with me. Okay, so basically, my work is that okay? That's good. That's part of what I do in my work. They don't see me. So basically, I want to know how many of you speak Spanish, because I wanted to do a little. How many of you speak Spanish?
Yes.
English? English? Oh, shit. That's not good. Maybe I should speak Spanish then. Okay. Well. Is that okay with the people who are Spanish to speak English? Yeah. Bueno, vamos a empezar. So basically, I come from a place where utopia is not an intellectual proposition. I come from a place where utopia is a proper step to build up something. So we kind of have the expectation that things have to happen, even if it looks crazy, impossible, and so on. And I think that is the legacy that I have taken from the place I come from. The other legacy that that place, which is Cuba, has provided to my work is the, let's say, the fucked up preparation to see that everything is political. So it is an unescapable situation there. So an example of that is a work I did in 1985 to 1996. It was a long-term piece called Homenaje a Ana Mendieta. And I always like to start my lectures or my talk about my work with this piece because it is, for me, what creates the ground or the floor plan for what I have built after that, which is several elements. First, the fact that I am very interested, I'm going to describe it very quickly. So, Homenaje a Ana Mendieta is a series of performances where I redo what is called now reenactment, but back then I was calling it redoing. Redoing the performance of Ana Mendieta and trying to research as much as possible her through her work and proposing that to people. Proposing the connection between her, as if she was already still alive, and the rest of the Cuban people, in a way to kind of talk about culture as a continuum situation, no? Something that one artist pick up from the other one and continue, no? And also I wanted to put her as a Cuban artist in an environment where people were leaving the island and they were being, I always say, erased, because, for example, you could be a musician and your discs are outside and you leave the country and then all of a sudden you cannot find any disc anymore of this artist and so on. So I think it was a period in Cuba where a lot of artists were migrating in a very dramatic way because it felt like we were getting emptied. So I think it was also a comment on that. And the third element is the role of authorship. I have been always kind of struggling with the idea of authorship, and I think, I don't know, I might be wrong. There are some Cubans here who can maybe correct me, but I think what happened is, like, the way I see my education is one in which the artists have a role that is a social role, in which you talk for other people, not only about your own personal struggle, internal, existential, but also there is this kind of assumption that you have to have some social role, and therefore the idea of the author has been right away very questioned, because then if you talk for you and for the other, and then it's always a kind of negotiation that you have to do with the work, and I think that has been a very important part of my work. So, this is what it is. One thing, you can interrupt at any time because I have a lot of pieces and I want to go very quickly, so I have no idea if you have any questions in between. So this is kind of the ground from which I come. There is another thing that is a very big relation with art history. I think most of my work, although I never talk about this in public so much because I don't want it to be an easy path for curators and for critics, but I always have a kind of conversation with other artists through my work, either with other art pieces and so on, and this is of course a very clear example of that. So basically what I did here was redoing the pieces and trying to find elements that were not finished, and I did a solo show of Anna and Tania, supposedly, where I redo all her work. So then, of course, through her I know also performance, which I think is unfortunate in one sense. The fact that a lot of her performance... How many of you know Ana Mendieta's work? Okay, good, excellent. So basically, the way in which Ana Mendieta was working performance was very much based on her body, and I think that didn't help me in a way, because a lot of people wanted to see that connection instead of seeing the connection that I was having with conceptual art, in which I was trying to create a kind of work in which it was not important what you see, exactly like the object, but the gesture. So I think this is a failure in my work, although it's funny because other people like Mosquera think different. But, and I think why? Because by that time I was doing Ana Mendieta's work, which was a very complex piece in which, actually I remember when I was doing my graduación, my thesis, there was a big conflict because some people in the jury were saying that we cannot give you your title because this is not your work. Like you're reproducing somebody else's work. Where's your creativity? So it was very interesting how my whole thesis was going around that. Like where is creativity and how a gesture can be considered art, you know. And I think for me it's more important. I always say that I don't do performance per se, but I do gestures, you know, and I think that's an important distinction of my work. So in this case, it's called The Burden of Guilt, El Peso de la Culpa. And it is a piece that comes out of another situation. It's a piece that comes out of, I was doing a newspaper, another piece that was a newspaper, called Memoria de la Posguerra, Memory of the Post-War. And I did 2 issues of that. And what happened is like, I had some difficulties, let's call it that way. And they were calling me because, you know, it was not very well seen by the people in the Council for the Arts, what I'm doing. Oh no. Oh, we have no memory. Battery? Beer? Do you have connected?
Yeah,
so basically, maybe I shouldn't talk about this. This is really
So, what methods did you always use anything to register or document your work right from the beginning, especially because of the way that
No, I have here a witness of that. Yeah. She's a curator, Magda, who's a curator from Havana, who she knows that I was a disaster, always documenting. And that has been a big problem, because maybe because my work is so much about the gesture and so on, I haven't been, you know, it's difficult to be in the work Because the work I do is, what I like about it is that you can see all the moments of art together, especially one I did at the Pompidou I'm going to show. And where you can see, while you're seeing the piece, you see everything. You see the process of production, you see the moment that the artist is doing the piece. And so it's very hard to, for me at least, I know other people are much better at it, but for me it's very hard to, and I'm a horrible photographer, and, you know, so...
When you say gesture, do you mean gesture, gesto?
No, I mean cultural gesture. For example, the fact that in a moment in which in the country, let's say the political policy, the official policy of the government was that whoever left the country, for in this kind of wave of artists that were leaving the country, was kind of erased, like it could not be in shows anymore. I mean, it was, of course, people did everything, but that was, if I am correct, the policy, no? To do an action in which I re-evaluate another artist who left in different conditions. I'm not saying it's the same conditions, because she was a kid, and she always wanted to go back to Cuba. She did a lot of bridges. But the fact that I was doing that gesture of saying that person is also part of Cuban culture, by elliptical situation, you are saying the other ones are also part of it, even if they leave. So I think it is that what I think is what I like most in my work, where the actual meaning is not what you see, but the context, and the way it activates the context. Of course, these pieces are very old, and I might have fantasized, and the way I'm narrating my work might be super cool, and wow, she's so great. But when you're doing it, you are very confused. At the same time, you're doing something, you're not sure why you're doing it. It's kind of instinctual sometimes, and sometimes when you finish is when you realize what you're doing. Sometimes no, sometimes you know in advance. But so I'm willing to be open to that process in which I don't have to torture myself because I don't know exactly everything all the time. But yeah, I have to know a few things. So basically it come up with one little idea, and then I try to, then it becomes very messy, and then it comes clear again. So yeah, so in this case, this piece was done having as a reference of the Cuban Indians legend that apparently, and this is a legend, I couldn't find anything, for sure, but this is what I heard and what I read about, in which Cuban Indians were different from other ones from Latin America, in which they were not trained for the wars, so therefore when the Spaniards came, they were like easily erased. And apparently what I heard is that they didn't know how to defend themselves, they didn't have like arms, so they decided to demonstrate by eating dirt until you died, like kind of a protest situation. And what I read is that it was a very massive kind of suicide, collective suicide or something. And that is something that I have for many, many years. That's something I heard, then I read about it, and for like 2 years before I did it, and then one day I was like, okay, that image of eating dirt is strong because of the meanings. So I said, okay, I'm going to do it, and then I related that with the fact that I was feeling that in '97, with all the contradiction coming out of everything that was happening in the East and Cuba and so on, and I felt like people were protesting a lot in their houses, but nobody was saying nothing. So I felt like this disparity in which innocence, which means the lamb, of course, is kind of a way of survive as well. It's kind of a double, norma doble filo, no? Because you survive, but then what happened after you survive, What do you do with that? What do you do with yourself, in a way? So here, of course, the elements are very universal, whatever, the lamb, meaning like innocence, And it's funny because being from Cuba, there's a big problem with my work, which is people all the time want to find Afro-Cuban elements or things related only to, and sometimes the work is not like that, Sometimes you say, okay, fine, sometimes you have to defend yourself because sometimes it's a little absurd the way people want to relate the work to the iconography they know. And at the same time, it's the opposite, because, for example, when I did this piece, there was the Havana Biennial. And one thing that I like a lot is, for the first time in my work, I opened the doors of my house when I did this. And there were people coming from my neighborhood, who is not precisely, it's a popular neighborhood, and people from the art world. And I really like the mix of the two. For the first time, I felt that was really good. And for example, people in my neighborhood say, comer tierra, eating dirt is like a sign of the worst. Estás comiendo tierra. After that, no more hopes. You know? But on the other side, so they get it really quickly. But the other side, I realized that curators were trying to find relationship with, for example, Nietzsche, the Hermann Nietzsche from the Viennese Actionism, and I had no idea who that guy was, you know. And so I think it was very interesting for me. This piece is when I realized the disparity of the reception of the work in relation with what people know already, you know, culturally. And why this is not happening? Let's see. It's blocked. So basically, it is blocked. Questions? Yeah. See, but no, it doesn't go to the next slide.
So the process of your work is the process is very hard to document in one single format, and you need your witnesses, you were saying?
Yeah, I think I rely a lot on the witnesses, as you say. I think that's
Lo testigo.
I rely on that a lot, and now it's going on her own. Anarchism is taking over. So I think it is a mix of both. I think I wanted a lot performance to be lived as a live memory. So I would love, for me, the best will be, and it happens sometimes, when somebody comes up to me and say, I remember how I felt 5 years ago in this piece. For me, that's the way my work should be. Remember, because I don't care about, I mean, of course I care about museums, so this is strategically that I care about museums. But now, because I don't, you know, when I was younger I cared a lot, but now I care less. So the thing is that I think there is a problem with the format and the demands of institutions that think that their function is to preserve something, but they're trying to put a form and a strategy for that preservation in a format that has nothing to do with that. And that's the problem, I think, in performance. A lot of people wanted to have like objects, photos, like whatever you always have in visual arts, you know. And there is a different way to preserve it. So in this case, it should be through the live action, you know. That's what I have seen. When I did the Ana Mendieta piece, that was kind of my statement as well. Oh well. So then, I got very pissed off because it's funny, I only did works like that one that you just saw with my body for 2 years, I think, no? 2097 to 99. But then everybody only talked about that, and I was very mad. And of course, as an artist, you don't always have the perspective what is good and what is bad. You just like or not one thing or another, and then sometimes you hate the work, and then 3 years later you say, no, it wasn't that bad, so I like it again. But so I was very annoyed about that, so I did this piece that was, for me, my declaration, a statement declaration of what performance body art is. And I was very happy because I went back to this kind of more conceptual approach to the work. And the piece is me and Jota Castro, which is a Peruvian artist. We decided to sign a contract where we said that whoever dies first will donate their body to the other artist to do an art piece. And this was, in 2004, I think we did, can't remember. But so what I like about this piece is that it's very hard to locate when the art is happening. It's because I had people come in and say, well, is the art that you had the idea of collaborating and doing this? Is the art the paper that you signed in front of the lawyer, or of the notario? Or is the art what we're going to see when one of you die? And I say, everything and nothing. You know, so that's my, and I really like this because I think that the condition of the art is something that is not permanent. And this is what I work a lot in my work. I don't think that something is art forever. I think there are things that activate the work to make it art. And then this activation can be too, let's say, común, so too everyday, or too, you know, you get used to it and then all of a sudden the work doesn't have that to you, or maybe the conditions change. So I think that piece I like for that reason. Yeah. So this is also the fact that a piece that I did before that one, the other one, but where I decided to start working with other people. Because I had a problem, I was working a lot about Cuba, but I was not living in Cuba so much because I was traveling, and then I was going to study in Chicago for my master's. So I felt there is a problem of rights. Who has the right to talk about place? You have to own a little bit. You know, I had this problem. I said, who am I to talk about Cuba? And I had to rethink that. Should I talk about Cuba or not? You know. But in this case, it's an example of how I start working with other people, and the fact that for me, the life these people had is what is important to choose them. So I am not working with, I try not to work with this general concept like the man, the woman, but just trying to see, for example, in this case, these are my neighbors from my house in Cuba, and in other cases I work, for example, for members of the Weather on the Ground group. You should know, probably?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think that the personal history, or the work history, or the social history that the people are a material for my work. It is something I see as a material. Because you cannot tell people, for example, I did another one with policemen, you cannot tell a person, look like a policeman, you know. Policemen have a specific experience in their life, and this is what I'm working with, you know. You don't need to tell them how to have certain attitudes, because they already have it, so that's important. So in this case, it was a piece that started a series of work called Untitled, and then inside the name of the city and the year. And of course, it's a reference, of course, to González Torres, but I never say that because I don't want it to be so easy. So, so in this case, it's Untitled Havana 2000. And in this case, it was, it is interesting that performance, to answer your question, performance most of the time need to be altered to be documented. So in this case, what you see is not the work. It's actually, the work was totally dark, and you enter in this smell, and the floor was not very comfortable to walk. And then you see a little light at the end, which is the television. And the light is a video edited without any sense. I mean, I didn't do any editing with the end, just put all the images one after the other, with images of Fidel. And there was one image that repeat every minute, which is him opening his vest and showing he has no bulletproof, you know, in the documentary, you know. And I think it was good because for me that piece was about, for me in my mind, of course, you know, whoever saw it maybe feel different, but for me in my mind it was about power and vulnerability, and this idea of how power works with the media to create, to generate, to construct vulnerability, to feel more. But really the people who were vulnerable were these people who were naked, and people didn't see it. So you pass by, everything is dark, and only when you turn, there is a light coming from the outside and you see there are actual live people inside the tunnel. And I think for me that was very important, and this is my favorite piece ever. I think it's very important because there is a moment in which you discover. And for me that happens in my work more and more, hopefully, that people go away from the comfort zone, to discover a situation that is normal, but kind of staged in a way that makes them react. So this piece is, so far no questions? I know. Another piece part of the series is this one called Untitled Castle 2002. And it's a piece where I kind of use the same system in which I try to eliminate the image. And I think this is important because I had for long, I didn't realize that until one day I sit down to look at my pictures and prepare a talk. And I realized that a lot of my work, except the one I did with my body, is also trying, hopefully, well in my mind I think, trying to problematize the visual in art. Like it's something that first you have no light, so you don't see anything. So it's kind of the elimination of the image, in a way. It's kind of changing the image for the experience, So you don't have the image, but you have the experience. So in this case, it's the opposite. In the other case, I thought, for me, the fact there was no light was, my mind was connected to the idea of the lack of knowledge, because that piece was under the Havana Biennial. And it was also referring to all these people coming to Cuba with very specific predisposed idea of how to look at reality and what to look for. So it was kind of that. So in this case it's the opposite. It was too much information because too much light. This is something I never said, but so it was kind of this idea of the lights, and the lights go off and then they go on. The thing is that when the lights are on, there is a person like a marching with cocking guns, and it is like a sound piece. Only with the lights, you don't see anything, but you feel. But hopefully, if you are in the right position, you can see that there is a real person doing the piece. So there are real people marching with a real gun, but of course it's altered, doing that. And in terms of medium, using the medium for me is also very important, that when I do performance, it's not only performance, so it's combined with other things. So in this case, this for me is a sound piece. It's not a performance, it's a sound piece, And hopefully when people get totally dark, they are, without sense of where they are, and hopefully think about it. This is also another piece on the series called Untitled Moscow, 2007, I think it was. Or, it has two titles, or Trust Workshop. And well, I was invited to Moscow, and I said, okay, Moscow, what that is. And this is interesting because for a long period of time I was kind of condemned to do only work about Cuba. First because I wanted, it was my reality, it's what I care about, but then I was going to other places and it was kind of, it became a little like a burden, because it was like the expectation of people is like, we want to know from your work about Cuba. And I was like, that's totally ridiculous, but and then it was caught up in this, but then finally I said, well, why can I not talk about other places with my vision, So it's a way to know about Cuba by my way of seeing it. So I think it has been a long time to do this. So in this case, I thought, okay, Moscow, this piece is also trying to work with the political imaginary that we have of places before we even know what's happening. So in this case, I of course thought, okay, KGB, all this Soviet experience. So I decided to hire an ex-KGB agent to do a trust workshop. But then there was a problem, like, why should I show? because that is not good. I cannot show people like monkeys, you know? Like, okay, haha, look at this, oh, it has problems. You know, I didn't want to make an exotism out of that. And of course, also the agent didn't want to do this in public, and it was complicated, but okay. So basically, what I decided is that the work will never be seen. So there is also the trust of the audience with me, if the work was done or not. Which I think is very important in art, you know, the idea of trust. And then I did an open reception, meaning that I was going to, but that's the sound of the other piece. So meaning I was doing an opening reception, meaning that I was going to do a performance to announce that the other performance was happening, but we were not going to see it. And it was basically this kind of destroy room where you get in, very excited, and you had these guys who were there at the Red Square for tourists with all these monkeys and 2 eagles and another monkey that is bigger. People were so excited about dealing with the animals. And of course, this is not like all of these countries where you cannot even touch the animal because there is like 17 laws protecting you and the animal, and then the art cannot be done in the meantime. So, so people were really excited playing with them, and you know. And of course, at the end of it, I gave them a photo. You know, they were at the moment giving a photo as the monkey. It was kind of not very nice. And I like that one said my kid. I don't know if you saw that. One said my kids, like this idea of like the new things. But that they get the photo, and what happened is like the photo is something like this, and then you see the image of another person in the photo, which is the creator of the KGB. And I think it was very important for me, this idea of like using a spectacle not as the end of a fin en sí mismo, not into, ¿cómo se dice? ¿Cómo? A means to an end, but as a way to introduce something that is very hard to talk about, you know. So in this case, it's all the, you know, all the history. So this is another piece. Also, the Colombia is part of that series that I have written. So this is another piece. I think I have worked a lot with the idea of the fact. I think I like more and more to work with facts instead of metaphors, let's say, and information. So in this case, for example, I knew that in December last year, December 2009, they stole the sign of in Auschwitz, and I was very perturbed. I said, okay, who wants that and what for? And I was trying to put in my mind what was that person thinking. I couldn't resolve that, so I decided for the art fair in Spain, Arco, which is something to buy, to reproduce the piece in real size, but also with the changes that was happening to the object. When they stole it, they had to cut it in three because it was too long. So they cut it in three, so basically the whole time of the fair, 50% of the time, there was one person working on the piece. We don't know if he was making it more beautiful or erasing it by gastarlo. So that was, and it was very funny because a friend of ours arrived and 5 minutes before the opening of the fair, and the guy was doing this, and he was like, Tania, come on, they're going to open the fair in like 5 minutes. And I said, no, that's the piece. And I love that. When that happens in my work, I'm the happiest artist ever. Because it's kind of like the moment where that's not so clear. Life and art is exactly in a simultaneous situation. It's not, and I love that. And I think it's funny because then he stayed like a long time looking at the piece. I don't know if it was because the guy was really beautiful for him or because he needed to understand what happened to him. He's a critic, so he was kind of out of, you know. So this piece, It's another series of work. It's called Tattling's Whisper. The series of work is called Tattling's Whisper. And it's a series about the media. It's about the media and about our relationship with images in the media. So in this case, what I have tried to do is to redo or do in real life images that we only access through the media. So in this case, of course, it's funny because now, well, not funny, but I mean, now in Egypt we have seen these images again. And so these are images very much, the images of mounted police are very much linked historically to protests and so on. But the funny part is like this policeman has told me that now they're only used for football matches. It was a little depressing for me, but now the world is coming back. So, so it's very, so basically what I asked them is to, whatever techniques they had to control, to do crowd control, to use it with the audience of the museum. And it has been very successful, a very simple idea. It was very successful. I think, for example, and this piece for me, what is important is that it was bought by the Tate as a performance, and in the contract I had said, and this is something I'm doing now too, precisely because I'm so bad at documentation, I think. In Cuba we have a saying, convertir los reveses en victoria. I love that, like to transform.
Bad time, good things.
The back what?
Bad time, good things.
Yeah, the back steps in good things. So basically, I'm very bad at documenting. So I have done also this. This is a very minimal act, but I think a minimal gesture. But I think there is a problem with political art in which a lot of artists are super political until the money comes in. And then you can see them ridiculously battering towards the image. Oh, that's my right of by this photo. Whatever. So I think that I had decided, and it's in the contract, that from this piece on, anybody can take photos of my performances, any format they want. They have total freedom to put it everywhere. And at the same time, if they come to me, I sign, so they can sell it to galleries. I mean, of course, it's easy to say that when I don't sell that much, but hopefully from now to 10 years old, I don't know. La suerte cambia, no? But I think it was important for me to kind of, if I'm talking about democracy, and the kind of elements I'm using for my work are related to politics, I think it was important for me to do that. And actually it has been awesome. I swear I didn't do it because this, I did it because I wanted to kind of make a small critique, an institutional critique, in the sense that once the artist is acquired by an institution, it loses so much, about his work. So I wanted to kind of do that. So basically, it was very good because now I'm on the YouTube all the time. So I've been more known since I say that than ever. So basically, this is part of that series. It is, I'm going to put a video. It is a piece, Tattling's Whisper, of course, and it is a piece that works as in two senses. For me, it works when you have it's an image that in Cuba is very recurrent, which is a podium and a leader talking, but we have been for a few years without that specific leader. And I think for me, for many people, has been very strong, in terms of iconography, And for me, this piece works in two ways. When there is nobody in it, it's almost like a monument to what we don't have, or like the monument of whatever, all of this. Let me put this further. And when somebody goes in, it is kind of, this one. when somebody comes in, it is almost a prelude of what could happen in the future. So I like very much this idea of past and future in the same piece. Let me see if I find somebody.
Tania, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, working at the Havana Biennale for 20 years,
Yeah.
from 1984 to 2000, I want to know, I would love to know how you trespassing the border of the censorship in Cuba, or what was the statement that you present to the team of curators at the Havana Biennale. I would love to know about that.
Yeah. I think
To allow you to make this inside the Wilfredo Land Center.
I think few things. I think, as you know, a lot of artists in Cuba use the moment of the Havana Biennial to put the tone a little bit higher because they know it's possible to have a little more, I mean, it's more control and at the same time it's less control because it's kind of too many things happening and, you know, and the press and...
Yeah, no, I guess it's a negotiation of mutual convenience.
Right, exactly. And I think what happened in this case is I was not going to participate with this piece. I was going to participate. They invited me, and I said, okay, what I want to do is an exhibition of Arte de Conducta, which was the school that I was doing, that I closed. And I think it was important for the students, or not the students, but the members of the project to be at the Havana Biennial and, you know, well presented. So that was my project. But then they invited Guillermo Gomez Peña as the main figure of the biennial, which is something I don't think he has done before. It was kind of the special guest of the biennial or something. And he decided to invite me.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So this is one level. Second level is this piece is not done for the first time in Cuba. It was done for the first time 2 years before in Valencia, and it was a total disaster because, of course, if you do this in Canada, they don't need a podium.
Yeah.
So people were kind of doing these stupid things where they start singing and doing jokes and, you know.
That
like,
was in Valencia Biennale?
and Ivan.
Ah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So then I think that also helped, the fact that it was not a new piece, that I could narrate to them how horrible the other experience was. And actually I was very worried, because as an artist I was worried that people were going to take it for cantar, y have fun, y make a stupid clownish thing. And to be honest, I was absolutely transparent with them, in the sense that I say, okay, I don't know where this can go. I am afraid it's not going to go the right way. For me, the right way was not to be good, and like people doing cantando or whatever. But the other thing is, like, I was completely honest. I talked to los dos, con el de consejo and the one from the direct. So they knew there was a risk.
So maybe you need to explain to the audience that in Cuba everything is like, you need to explain everything and you have different levels.
Yeah, and I think also it has been something interesting. Since 2003 I didn't show in Cuba. Because once I started Arte de Conducta project, I stopped showing in Cuba because sometimes, the piece in the other biennial with the sugarcane was only lasting a few hours on one day. Open, and they did. So I didn't want to create art that could tint the way in which people see the members of Cátedra in a bad way and can damage them in a way that, you are with this, conflictive or whatever. No? So I decided to stop. So it was also the first time 6 years, almost 7 years that I showed in Cuba. So I think there were a lot of elements. And it was very funny because, for example, the actual Cuban press was there. It was super respected. Tremenda expectación, no? Like the Cuban national TV was in it, and when they were seeing what's going to happen, it was very weird because they saw that and they were like, should we keep filming this or should we go? It was a very it was a very disturbing situation for some people because, of course, And also, Guillermo and I, we were going to collaborate. That was the original idea, to do collaboration, but then we start trying, but his work is so precise in terms of images. And I mean, we couldn't get into the middle point, so we decided that each of us was going to do one piece the same day, one after the simultaneously. But then the rain came in, so his equipment he couldn't get on, and I said, okay, we have to go because people have been waiting 45 minutes, they will leave, And he said, okay, yeah, you start, and then when I am ready, I'll let you know, and then you start, and I start. So this is how we do it. So yeah, but of course, when the piece finished, I had to go upstairs to the central lab and talk to them again. And my argument was the following, and it still is my argument. I am not doing harm. You say there is a democracy, I'm showing it. So I still think I'm not doing harm. But depend on the point of view, of course. And I still think, and then it's true that then they wanted me to sign this paper saying, and actually I was volunteering to go to Ministerio de Cultura to explain that this is not what they think. I mean, of course, I was thinking from the art point of view, they were thinking from political point of view, of course. But I said, leave it alone. And no, they wanted to do this paper saying that they are not in favor of this. I said, leave it alone. I said it to them, I said, leave it alone. Yeah, tranquilo. Oh, man, do you want to sign it? I said, no, I'm not signing it, but leave it alone, Me lo sacaron el papel. So I think it is a problem of old methodology with new mediums that actually was at stake there. So hopefully that was, I don't know. But of course after that, I'm feeling very clearly that I cannot do anything else.
Do you find that experience similar to when you have had to deal with the expectations of like the institutions that define performance art and so on? Do you find that it could be spoken about in the same terms? Yeah,
but one is a medium and the other one is the implication of an action. But yeah, probably that's kind of... well, I'm going to leave that one because it's too long. So I think we can stop at this one probably. Oh no, let me just go with this one. Okay. So, for example, this is a good answer to the question about political and, This is a piece I did in which I was reading a text I made about what I think should be political art and so on. I'm not a good writer, so text is not so good, probably. But whatever, I put my ideas on what I think. And then every time I finished one page, I was playing the Russian roulette, for real. And the idea was precisely a kind of call to the artists who work in politics to, if you're going to be in politics, try to go into the final consequences of things, So that was kind of an way of exemplifying, how to exemplify that. Yeah, it was very extreme. One bullet. I don't know. Okay. Okay, so the last piece I want to talk about is IP de Tournement, and it's a project. I was invited to do a piece at the Pompidou. Is this kind of 1 week project rooms, and they invited me to react to the collection. So I said, okay, what can I do? And I decided to write the artists in the collection, asking them permission to pirate their work in the collection and sell it for €1 outside of the museum. Like, this kind of top mantas from Spain and so on. So basically what I exhibit was the letters of rejection, of course, which more people were reading. And then the other ones. I used the Pompidou space as for example, this is the list of the works that were in the exhibition, but at the same time it became the shopping list, because people who wanted to buy, they knew that's the pieces available. So basically I used the museum as a kind of, this is a storage that I created, So as a kind of way of promote the videos that people could buy outside. So basically, for me, it was, of course, again, a kind of a stage in the situation I have right now, which institutions are kind of spaces very complicated for me because I'm trying to do more public artwork and things outside the institutions. And it kind of showed the dichotomy of what is inside the museum that looks like this, very like, kind of dead or whatever, and what is outside, which is